All right. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Good.
I just sleep my ankle hurts.
All right. So if you weren't here last week, I think you all were. So anyway, the last week's lecture is still up. No worksheet for that one, but we're going to continue on in chapter 7 today, and I'm going to lecture on the extremes of intelligence, and just so we can continue on in chapter 7. And there's a one-page worksheet I'll give with this one, but it's not due tomorrow. So the only thing that's due tomorrow will be the two that I've given you so far. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. So there's extremes of intelligence, and we're gonna go through these. We're gonna talk about just a few things today, and we're gonna talk about just individual differences within intelligence. We're going to talk about nature and nurture just for a second, but with it, just a couple of seconds right at the end. We're going to talk about individual differences. We're going to talk about giftedness. We're going to talk about intellectual disability or intellectual development disorder, and we're going to talk about emotional intelligence today. Okay, we're just going to talk about those just a little bit and discuss them, and then give us some information on those things. All right. IQ tests obviously help to identify people who have intelligence. Correct? Y'all know pretty much what an IQ test is. We generally know. We don't have like complete knowledge of what that is. Even I don't. I've never taken an IQ test. I don't know what my IQ is. I probably don't care to know what my IQ is. Okay, y'all probably don't care to know what my IQ is. So I'd probably be severely disappointed in what my IQ is. So I don't want to know. All right. So but IQ tests help identify groups of people. Right. Those on one end are typically called what? Do you know? On the high end. What do you think people on the high end of the IQ test are typically called? Geniuses, right? They're the brilliant people. Where I stand, right? No. Okay, right. So there are people on the high end that are geniuses, and then there's other group made up of people who are on the other end, which are typically called intellectually disabled, where IQ scores typically fall below the normal scale, right? Those are the two extremes of the intellectual the curve, okay? Intellectual extremes of intelligence, okay? All right, so let's talk about intellectual disabled first. What does this mean? What causes it? We're going to talk about this just a little bit. All right, so intellectual disability or intellectual development disorder. It's a neurological or neurodevelopmental disorder, right? So there's three things that have to happen for somebody to have this. Person has to exhibit deficits in mental abilities, approximately 2 standard deviations below the normal curve. In other words, so if a normal person scores a 70 on a test, they would have to go 2 levels below that at their age level. Okay. Second, a person's adaptive behavior. In other words, skills that allow a person, right, to live independently, like a job, talk to others, eat, get dressed, bathe, with no help. This behavior has to be at a level appropriate for their age, right? So if a person can't do a simple task of putting their clothes on, right? Working a job, let's say like at 16, right, you should be able to work a job that has simple tasks, flipping burgers or, running a register simply, things like that. If they can't do that simple task, then there's issues, right? Problems, right? If at 9 or 10, simple things of putting their clothes on, making their bed, things of those natures, then there's obviously adaptive behavior skills problems there that they have. All right, and so then there's the third issue for intellectual disability, which is limitations. All these limitations begin in the developmental period. Okay, so that's the third requirement for somebody actually to have this disorder. Okay, and the developmental period, this is the early childhood to adolescent period. Okay, in other words, it doesn't happen past then, right? So it should be identified during this time frame, so early on in life, right? It's not identified anytime after that. Okay, unless there, I would assume there would only be an intellectual disability unless after that time frame, if there was some sort of traumatic event. Okay, there would have to be some sort of traumatic event, head injury or something like that, to have a intellectual disability after that. Intellectual disability only occurs in about 1% of the population. Okay? All right. So how do they know someone is intellectually disabled? Well, here's the thing: is when you go out and you look on the Google Classroom, I shared this with you right at the first of the year. The DSM-5 is a Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Right? That I gave y'all a copy of that out on Google Classroom. All right, and so any mental disorder or anything, it gives you the criteria for all that out there. All right, so here's what that says is here's what the DSM-5 says or lists for intellectual disabled. Okay, is standardized test of intelligence. There has to be a clinical assessment. There has to be adaptive function across 3 domains. Okay, right? Adaptive function, right? Right. Skills that allow people to live, right? So they have to have some sort of testing done across 3 domains, right? So 3 things, right? Here it is: conceptual domain, right? So memory, reasoning, language, reading, writing, math, and other academic skills. So they have to have some sort of testing across that. They also have to have some sort of testing along social, right? Like empathy, social judgment, interpersonal conversation, other skills to make and emotional and to be able to make friendships and maintain friendships. Okay, so they have to have some sort of adaptive function in that as well. All right, so conceptual, social, and then practical. All right, the practical one is self-management, skills, be able to have a job, go to school, and manage money. All right, so in the DSM-5, it says there has to be 3, they have to have adaptive function across 3 domains: conceptual, social, and practical. All right, and then also in the DS-5, there is no age criteria for this. Okay. And before there used to be before the DSM-5, there used to be an age criterion. Now there is not. Okay, all right. So intellectual disability can be mild to very profound, right? So learning difficulties for intellectually disabled people, they can be very difficult in school. But then also these people, like when they get out of school, like they can be very concrete thinkers and actually live very good lives once they get out of school, right? Like I think of my my cousin Ronnie, and he is, oh my gosh, he is 58. I think at 58, maybe 60. Okay, he has the mindset of I think he has the mindset of an 18-year-old now. I think is what he's tested at. All right, maybe 20, maybe. All right, but I think it was maybe 5 years ago, he finally got to live on his own. Like he got to live on his own finally. Like he got to move out of his mom's house and live on his own. And he was excited. Like he finally learned the skills to be able to live on his own. And he could take care of himself. But it took him into his real age is, in his 50s, and his mental age was he was probably 16 or so when he could finally move out on his own. Does that make sense? So anyway, great guy. Loved anybody he came in contact with. All right, so what are the causes of intellectual disability? All right, so there's lots of causes to this. Unhealthy living conditions can affect brain development. Lead poisoning, parental exposure to mercury or other toxins, malnutrition, lack of health care, all these crazy things, okay? There's also biological causes, right? So a baby in the womb, like fetal alcohol syndrome, exposing the baby to alcohol, this can cause a child to be below average intellect or the disability itself. There's also the Fragile X syndrome. This is where an individual has a defect in a gene on the X chromosome, on the 23rd, they have the 23rd pair, right? Leading to a deficiency in a protein needing for the brain to develop, all right? So, right, this is what Ronnie has, my cousin Ronnie has, all right? Is he has a gene on the X chromosome on the 23rd pair, leading to a deficiency in a protein needing for the brain to develop. And this is what happened to him, all right? And these people have very leading characteristics of their face and body, right? Like you can tell who they are, okay? Not trying to make fun of them or anything, just trying to explain, guys, okay? And so these are biological causes of why people are intellectually disabled, okay? Other causes are simply this: lack of oxygen at birth, damage to the baby in the womb, right? Drug use from the mother, or accidents during childhood, all right? All of these can be causes as to why there's intellectual disability, all right? But here's the thing, and I want y'all to understand this very much. So individuals with intellectual disability are just as responsive to love and affection as anyone else. And they need to be loved, and they need to have friends just like we all do. Right? Like, it doesn't matter if they can't understand 2 plus 2. It doesn't make a difference. This is something that I've always been able to see is like somebody who is intellectually disabled they still react and respond to love. And my cousin Ronnie, he may not quite fully grasp all the things of this world and everything else, but by golly, he knows whether or not you love him or not, right? Whether or not you'll take him, he lives in Walters, whether or not you take him to Max and you'll buy him, a couple of, chicken strips and some fries at Max and a Coke and sit down with him and talk to him, you know what I mean, for a half hour or longer, because the dude can talk about everything. I mean, you know what I mean? Because in his mind, that's love, right? And so I'm just saying, like, individuals are like that. And if you have somebody in your life like that, just show them love, show them some time, and that can mean all the difference in the world to them. Okay? We all know somebody who may be on this scale of intellectual disability, but here's the thing: is love can cover a multitude of things. Okay? All right. So let's move on. All right. Let's talk about giftedness. All right. So here's the criteria for giftedness. All right. These are the people who are considered gifted if their IQ is above 130. All right. Now, geniuses' IQ falls above the 140, like it's above 140. So giftedness, these are the people that are just 130, and then the geniuses are 140 and above. Okay? So gifted people are smart, geniuses are smarter. That makes sense? So the geniuses think the gifted people are dumb. Okay? You get what I'm saying? What? So, see, she caught my joke. See, nobody else did. Wow. Ha. Dad jokes, right? All right, there we go. See, like, nobody else caught it. Okay. All right. Yeah, all right. Dang. Man, tough crowd. All right, so that's the difference between gifted and geniuses there. All right, so characteristics, right? There's all these false beliefs that gifted people are weird, right? They have problems. They're they're physically weak. They're more likely to suffer from mental illnesses. They're usually categorized as the mad scientist or the evil genius in movies, right? They're, the one always behind the scenes working everything out, right? That guy, right? The genius. Anyway. But there was a study done, right? Lewis Terman in 1925 did a study. It showed that gifted were socially well adjusted, right? They're not socially awkward. And they actually were skilled leaders. And they were actually average in height and weight and attractiveness. And they were actually more resistant to mental illness than other people. And actually only those that had high IQs of 180 or higher, those are the only ones that actually had any social or behavioral problems, and they only had them as kids. So this false idea that smart people actually have all these issues and problems actually really isn't quite true. And then Joan Freeman did a study of gifted kids. And it says this is that actually gifted kids really after they grow up, actually gifted kids that were pushed by their parents at younger ages to achieve more actually grew up to be actually unhappy adults. So and then some of these kids some of them actually grew up to be wealthy, but some of them grew up to be poor. Okay? And these were longitude studies. In other words, very, very long studies. All right? They weren't done in short periods of time. They were done over, decades. Okay? And then there was another study done. All right? And it says this, is that there was more to life than intelligence. More to life than intelligence. And it says like this, liking one's work. The point of the study was this: more to life. There's more to life than intelligence. In other words, to loving life, okay, or liking life. It's this: is liking one's work, having a sense of purpose in life, and a high energy level. In other words, intelligence wasn't everything, right? Intelligence wasn't what would allow you to be successful. Okay? That wasn't the be-all, end-all. Okay? There was more important things, right? One study showed that even intelligence and parents pushing their kids to be intelligent and to push made their kids unhappy adults because they were never satisfied with what they got. And then in another study, it showed that there was more to life than intelligence, right? Like liking what you do, having a sense of purpose in your life, and then actually having a high energy level instead of being tired all the time. There's something in this. There's something in this. This is stuff I took straight from our psychology book. I didn't go outside of our psychology book. Okay, guys? This is stuff straight from our psychology book. All right? It sounds like something I pulled out of somewhere else, right? Yeah. Y'all are all doubting me No, I pulled this straight out of our psychology book. No, straight out of our psychology book, all right? It's very interesting when you start looking about psychology, when you start really studying stuff, is that the science supports some of these things that people are saying about how to be happy in life. Okay? All right? It's the simple things that will push you to be happy in life, all right? So just take note of them, all right? It's not to mean that you can't push yourself to be successful. It doesn't mean you can't push yourself to achieve high things and to achieve academic success and things like that. That's not what I'm saying to do, okay? All right? But it's not the be-all, end-all, okay? It's okay not to go to college. That's okay. And if you don't do that, that's okay. It's okay to be a welder. It's okay to be a mom. It's okay to do those things. It's all right. You can find purpose in your life without going and getting a college degree. It's okay. All right? And not many teachers will tell you that. That's the truth. Not everybody has to have a college degree, all right, to find purpose in their life. All right? All right, emotional intelligence. Let's talk about that. So why do people in life who have no book smarts seem to be successful? And then some people who have all the book smarts seem never to be successful. Have you ever wondered that? Have you ever thought about that? No. It's like, no, I got it together. I don't wonder that stuff. But it seems to be like there's some people that are like that, right? Well, it seems to me, and it seems what people, and I've heard about this over and over throughout my life is emotional intelligence is probably one of those answers. And before I had read that in here, I had always researched that and looked at that. But emotional intelligence is this. It's the awareness and ability to manage one's own emotions, to facilitate thinking, and attain specific goals, and the ability to understand what others feel. Right? So a person who has emotional intelligence has self-control of their emotions, such as anger, impulsiveness, and anxiety. They also may have empathy, the ability to understand what others feel. They also have the awareness of one's own emotions, sensitivity, persistence, even in the face of frustrations, and the ability to motivate oneself to keep going. Having emotional intelligence, people tend to have better social relationships. They're also perceived as more positive by others. Sometimes they have academic success. They were more successful at work. They also seem to have experienced greater psychological well-being. And now, that's just a brief note on emotional intelligence. Like I think it's safe to say that those who can control their emotions, those who can perceive what's going on around them, tend to be successful. Before I ever became a teacher, I felt like I was pretty successful. I rose up the ranks. When I was in banking, I went from being a teller to a loan officer, a position that they only gave to people who had degrees, and I didn't have one. Okay? And I think I can accredit that to emotional intelligence for myself. Did you have a question? No. Okay. So your hand was up. But I think I can accredit that to emotional intelligence because I paid attention to what was going on around me, right? I made sure that when there was opportunities, I made sure to be at the right place at the right time, the right moment, and perceive what was going on around me and to do the right things. Okay? I didn't connive my way into anything, but I was just successful at what I did and what they told me to do, and because I was intelligent in the small things, it led to other bigger things. So I think you can be successful without having a degree, and emotional intelligence I think is part of it. So let's talk about nature and nurture for just a second. And I have literally nothing written down on my notes about nature and nurture. Like, it just says nature and nurture. But they did a study about twins, all right? And about what intelligence does for nature and nurture. And it simply says this, is if it was hereditary for intelligence, okay? You would take two twins and they would score the same thing on an IQ test, correct? If it was just genetics, right? You would assume that, correct? Well, that's not true. It doesn't happen. Okay? There's deviation in it. Okay? When you take two exact twins who live in the same household, they score different in the IQ test. Okay? You take two sets of twins that have been split up and they're in similar households, because what the weird thing is they tend to be in similar households, similar social economic households, even when they're split up, and they take an IQ test, it still deviates. It's still different. So this is what it tells us, is that nobody is born with intelligence. All right? Is that it tells us that there's a deviation. It tells us that nurture plays a part in intelligence. Yes, people may be born with some sort of level of intelligence. However, nurture has a part in it too. So there's no clear defining answer between nature and nurture. There's none. Except that nurture has something to do with it. All right? That's the only thing it tells us, is that nurture has something to do with it. In other words, it's something you're going to have to learn. All right? So, all this being said, are there any questions? Just a thumbs up by Brooke back there. Thumbs up. We got 2 thumbs up, 3 thumbs up. So that's all we got. 3 thumbs up, which means we're good. See? All right. All right, so get busy on your worksheets. Self-care also out there. Self-care due tomorrow. And then new one will be out Wednesday morning. And then I'm going to try to lecture a lot this week, and then we'll have a test next week on Chapter 7. So, okay? Sound good?
Yep.
All right.